Good evening, YouTube, and welcome back to another one of Tyler's tech tutorials. Today I'm going to show you how to build another virtual machine. Only this time it's going to be a Windows 10 machine, Windows 7 and a Windows 10 virtual machine. Now, I actually already built these machines, so I'm probably going to spend this video and talk about other things too that are relevant. So just to kind of finalize on the video we did last night. So here we have DC1. It is installed on, if this is a virtual machine, DC1, we installed Active Directory Domain Services and DNS, and it's currently running as DC1 as a domain controller. We built this environment on our host machine running Hyper-V. That would be this environment. And we want to go through and we want to make sure that there's a couple things we want to check for. First things first, whenever you build a server, before doing anything with it, make sure it's up to date. That's one thing I did not show you last night. I actually did the update process while I was waiting for the third video. But we can go ahead and test it anyways. Now you want to, when you're running system updates, it's best to do it during off hours, because with especially Windows updates or Microsoft updates, it could utilize some additional bandwidth and just cause more traffic on the network and congestion. Then users will be calling saying, "Hey, why is everything so slow?" You know. So be cautious when you're running Windows updates. That's why when group policy is configured for computer updates, it's usually done after hours or off hours when the computers are not being used. And usually they'll force you to restart the computer when the updates are finished installing. So we're not going to talk about updates though in this one. We want to, so here I have the setup. I have another solid state drive attached to this computer, to this desktop tower that's a Hyper-V host machine. And that's where we're saving all of our storage for our virtual machines. As you can see, just one virtual machine takes up a lot of space on that drive. So what if I wanted to build another virtual machine called DC3 or FS3 for file services, or RDP or RDS for remote desktop services, or let's say I wanted to build a VPN server and set up routing and remote access. But I don't want to use the host machine. I want to build it right on DC1. But it's a virtual machine. How can I do that? Because it's already a virtual machine. So with Hyper-V, it comes with what's called nested virtualization, and that's where I can build a virtual machine within a virtual machine. That's pretty cool. And we're going to do that, probably not right now, but very soon. So to make sure we have the prerequisites, now we attached a second virtual hard disk, but it's not showing up. Why not? If I went to disk management, it's available, but it's offline and no memory has been allocated to it yet. So let's initialize this disk and allocate some memory. create a partition and format a volume so we can start saving data to it. So I'm going to go to command prompt and I'm going to activate Windows PowerShell. And I'm going to query all my storage I can type today. Okay, so there's disk 1, and it's currently offline. So let's initialize that disk. So I'm going to hit the up key. I'm going to pipe, and I'm going to let it spell. I'm going to initialize disk number 1. Okay. So now if I query all of our disks, all right, so let's initialize disk number 1 again. Let's try it. Okay, so now if we query all disks that are online, they're both online. Very good. So let's create a partition. So we're going to create a new partition on disk number 1. We're going to assign a random drive letter and use the maximum disk space available. As you can see, drive letter D will now be visible but we cannot use it yet because we have to create a volume and format that volume with NTFS permissions so it'll be compatible on our Windows system. So let's format volume, drive letter D, the file system is going to be NTFS, the network transfer file system, and that's custom for Windows 10 permission, or I'm sorry, that's for Windows system. So if you have file shares on a network and you want to have certain users you want to construct user permissions throughout your organization. So you have a public drive and you want your executives to have full access to that, then they will. But if you want some users to have access to, the public files and folders, but you want to restrict certain files on there to, certain members only, you can use NTFS permissions and create security-based enumeration on each object, on each folder. So they won't be able to access the contents that they shouldn't be able to access. We'll actually go through and demonstrate it. So NTFS, and then let's see. Okay, so let's confirm. Yes. Missing anything? Okay. So now, if we were to go look, and there's our newly formatted virtual hard disk. Now let's say I wanted to enable nested virtualization. On DC1. So I'm going to turn this computer off for now. And let's go back to our Windows 10 machine and set that up. When we go through and enable nested virtualization on DC1, we want to make sure it's off. It won't work if it's on. And for the time being, we're going to go in here and we're going to activate security on this. And I just read something. So I want to see if I can. I want to turn automatic updates on. I do want to patch up this system. What that's telling me is that I need to activate my product key for this machine. I'm not going to. I don't need to. But I do want to install updates. Whatever updates are available out there for it. So yes, I'm in the US. No, I don't want to add a second keyboard. So I'm going to force a stop. And it didn't like it. Okay, so now DC1 is off. All right, let's clear. All right, so let's see our list of VMs currently installed on this host machine. All right, so DC1 is in its off state. So I want to set the VM processor of virtual machine DC1 and expose virtualization extensions. And now I've enabled nested virtualization. To disable, I would do the same and type in false instead of true. So let's start the VM. Okay, so that is just one thing I ran into that I did not expect. So let's go into the settings and look and see if we can figure out why it's doing that. Actually, we would want to look at Hyper-V settings. And this all could come back to the machine that I'm currently, the hardware that I'm currently using. Yeah, so it's not going to work, unfortunately. Yeah, it will work, just not on this machine. I'll have to find another old computer to use, and then I'll show you. So let's go back and type in false to disable nested virtualization. Now this is why you always want to, whenever you're testing, or whenever you're configuring services for the first time, or migrating systems, you want to have develop a testing environment to do this in, because think of this as a live virtual environment. Not good. What if that one command broke this virtual machine that I spent some decent amount of time building? Yes, it has happened before. That's why it's critical you make sure you're building and testing in an isolated environment to avoid any services or disruptions. Okay, so while that's updating, no, I have a Windows 10 machine already built and running. I turned it off for this purpose, but I'm going to go in and assign a license to an account. All right, so let's go into our Windows server in VirtualBox. And let's switch user. Let's sign in as Chris J. Because Chris J is a domain admin. We don't need to use the built-in domain administrator account. All right, so that's going to take a few minutes to set up. We should have our server up and running. It might take a few minutes. It's going to install some updates, and let's see here. All right, so we're going to find a user.